Hey, what's up, you guys, and welcome to the Everything Travel Nurse Show. I'm your host, Travel Nurse Gary, and this week's episode, we're talking about the top 10 reasons not to become a travel nurse. We all see the Instagram, we see Facebook, we see TikTok, and travel nurses are always just having a great time. Is it really as great as what everybody makes it out to be? Before we go to this week's video, I want to talk about the top 10 reasons to become a travel nurse. Make sure that you watch both episodes so that you can get a comparison between the two videos. And hey, listen, if you guys like today's video, make sure that you give the thumbs up. It helps the YouTube algorithm and let other travel nurses know that this is valuable content. Follow me on Instagram. I post there pretty much daily. All my YouTube videos are shot in 4K, so make sure to watch these on the big screen. And if you'd like to see more videos in the future, hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you on here on the Everything Travel Nurse Show. Stick around, everybody. This is the top 10 reasons why you shouldn't become a travel nurse. But in order to really write this video, I feel like we gotta get out of this room and go get some inspiration for writing. Alright, you guys, so we're here in Ketchikan, deserted island, right? And we have 4 boats in harbor right now. It's about 8,000 to 10,000 people on each one. So if you stop and do the math, it's not exactly a deserted island anymore. And we actually have Disney right down the road here. So in honor of Disney, I'm feeling a little motivation. I feel like I can write this now. And I think that the number 10 spot we're gonna go with Diamond in the Rough. Things may not always see what they appear. And sometimes you get to a spot and it ain't exactly what you thought it was gonna be. So that's the number 10 spot. Stick around, we have a great episode for you. So on this week's video, we're filming that opening scene, and I literally had to wait for about 3-4 hours until all of the cruise liners were loading up, and they were at the end of loading up and getting ready to sail in order to shoot this film, because there was just so many people in the downtown area. I mean, there was probably pretty close to between 25,000 people just in the downtown area right there, and it was just cram-packed. So that's just one of those things you got to take into consideration when being a travel nurse. And another thing to take into consideration before becoming a travel nurse is the number 9 spot, not a nurse, a traveler. And what this really means is that when they're making up assignments, a lot of times, a lot of hospitals will have this atmosphere the travelers, they're making more money, they're getting more, they're not nurses, they're travelers, they're separate. Let's give them the hardest assignment, or let's go give them the isolation payments, or let's float them down to ER even though they have no experience in the emergency department. And it's this mentality of they're not nurses, they're travelers. And that's something that you need to really stop and consider before becoming a travel nurse, because it's real. Also, not all hospitals do this, okay? There are a lot of facilities where it's that mindset where it's just they're not a nurse, they're a traveler. Now coming in at number 8 is the toxic work environment. Now I have an entire YouTube video just on toxic work environments, because this is something really real, and it's very prominent in the travel nurse field and all across management and hospitals altogether, especially since this pandemic. Since 2000, we've really seen the toxic work environment really ramp up because of this pandemic. And you just see when you go to hospitals, there's just this environment that is just toxic for everybody, for nurses, for travelers, for the patients, and you just, one of the great things about being a travel nurse is that you only have to do 13 weeks, get in, get out, clock in, clock out. It's a toxic work environment. It's something that you're going to have to deal with as a traveler. At the number 7 spot, we have the cut. And if you're a travel nurse, you already know about the cut. For all you others who don't know about the cut, let's talk about it. The hospital, in their contract, they can cut you or cancel your contract at any given time. So you're never truly safe just because you have a contract written in front of you saying that you're going to do 13 weeks, 26 weeks, and you're going to make X amount of dollars. So they can cut your contract at any time. That's the number 7, the cut. All right, so at the number 6 spot is going to be loneliness. And this isn't a problem that I so much faced. I know that in Los Angeles and New York, I felt like it was a little bit more of a problem than everywhere else. But loneliness is a problem that many nurses face, and it happens at multiple levels. There can be a single nurse, and they're lonely because they don't get out and interact with other people, and they miss their family. And it can also happen, I've noticed, at the family level, where you have a couple or a family traveling and they miss their extended family. So I want to come to you guys beforehand and say, if you're getting ready to travel, or if you are a travel nurse, make sure that you find a way to cope with this loneliness beforehand and stop and actively think about it. I want to give you my recommendation real quick on what helped me. I have a support person in my life, and I want to really recommend to you to actually actively tell your support person to call you up once a week and to talk to you, call you, see how you're doing, and then ask you the question, is there anything you need in order to be successful as a travel nurse that I can help you with? It seems like if you just have somebody ask you and support you in this way, it really, really helps you out as a travel nurse. Now, I also want to talk about this in that I've also seen nurses being lonely to the point where they consistently fly back home and then they fly their family to them. And one of the main reasons that they take the contract is so that they can be profitable. But then they end up spending all of their money flying back to their family and flying their family to them. And it's like, well, if you're going to use all of your excess capital that you create by taking a travel contract on seeing your family, well, did you really need to leave? Was that something that you had to do? Money wise, make sure that you guys get your money right when you're doing travel nursing. At number 5, we've got compassion fatigue. You got the diamond in the rough, not a nurse, toxic work environment. You got the cut to worry about, the enforcer, all that to deal with. And on top of it, it's like you have, like the last 2 years, what we've seen is just like it's really hard to not be burnt out and to not have compassion fatigue with everything that's just happened and you've been exposed to. So like burnout, compassion fatigue, you have to really, really have like a regiment and like a way to battle this and be active about battling this as a travel nurse, because it's something that you're gonna have. And ask any travel nurse about compassion fatigue and burnout and ask them how they feel about it. They'll tell you 100% that they agree that's a part of the problem, and it's part of the job. Number 4. All right, so at the number 4 spot, we have no breaks. And this is something that I've really seen outside, or really in California. And you see California is that they have a break nurse in each hospital unit. And it's like their job to come and give breaks. And it's really interesting seeing the culture between California and the other 48, where like California, like the breaks, everybody wants to be a nurse and they get paid really well and they get breaks. And it's like they don't have turnover like the other 48 do. And the other 48, like you don't get a break a lot of times because there's nobody to break you. Like the charge nurse has patients, everybody has patients, and if you're in a really sick ICU, you can't just leave your patients with somebody else, or like the emergency room. It doesn't matter which specialty you're in, it's really difficult to double somebody else's burden so that you can leave and go take a break, and it just ends up happening that you don't get a break a lot of time, and it really makes for a hard career not getting breaks for 30 years. So at the number 3 spot, everybody, we've got family and patients. As the nurse, it's like your job to make sure that there's good communication between the two, and then on top of it, have communication between the physician and nursing so that everybody's kind of on the same page. And when there's family dynamics where there is no family, or there's family dynamics where there's drama, it's like you have to deal with that drama, and you're the one who has to manage it and then kind of shape it into a direction where you go into a positive direction. And as a traveler, you're sometimes working with patients with mental health disease, you're working with patients with prescription abuse, with drug abuse, with alcohol abuse, and you're consistently always pushed into these harder patients. And because you get these really hard patients, it becomes really, really hard to manage them, their families, and the families, we can go off on the families and talk about them for an entire episode, because I don't know about you guys, but I've seen so much anger coming from families since this lockdown that we've seen over the last couple of years, and that the hospitals have really put limitations on how many family members can come visit. And you might get 30 family members who get into the waiting room, and then it's your job to tell them and let them know that they can only have one person come and visit. And you go in there and they all attack you at the same time, and it's like, whoa, this is too much. Like, family and community and patients are difficult to manage, and it seems like there's been an increase in the anger at healthcare staff over the last few years, and it's just becoming more and more difficult to work with, and it's especially difficult as a traveler. So at the number 2 spot, what we've got for you is understanding that travel nursing and working on the floor as a traveler, it's a really hard job. Like, it really is. And I've talked about this recently with quite a few travelers, and it's like, it's not a job that most people really do long term because it's so hard on your body. They really look at it and say, listen, I just want to go travel for 2-3 years. It's a really great opportunity to go live all over the nation, but it's too hard. I mean, you're really in there sweating and just doing just 45 minutes of CPR. Think about it. It doesn't matter who you are. You're doing CPR for 45 minutes. You come out of that room, you're drenched sweat, got your cardio workout done for the day. And then to go back and be like, oh yeah, we've got another 11 hours to go for this shift. Yeah, it's a really difficult job, especially if you're in some of those really big ICUs, or you're in a really big ER and you just have really high patient flow. It's a really tough job, and you just need to understand that, like, physically it demands a lot out of you. You need to be in pretty good shape when doing this, and I feel like I always have to work out because of this job, and if you don't work out and don't have good body mechanics and just like good genetics, you might not be able to do this job because it is hard. Now, there are some small hospitals that you might be able to find that are going to be a little bit easier, and that's kind of something that I kind of take into consideration when traveling as a nurse, is that I try and find like a small hospital to do during the summertime. The rates always drop in the summertime, and I just want to find a nice place to chill during the summer. But then fall, that's when I'll be in the bigger hospitals, and it's bumping. Everybody, it's the countdown to the number 1 spot. Let's go ahead and start it off with number 10. And the number 1 answer is, I'm going to go with abuse. This is a pretty good reason not to become a healthcare worker. It is something that will most likely occur during your career as a travel nurse, while you're working with those patients who are on methamphetamine, who are on bath salts, who are dementia patients, who are just mental health patients, and they just don't always know not to hurt you. And it seems like most Americans, when they do become confused, their first reaction is to become violent and angry and to project that on the healthcare worker. It's something that's real. It's something you need to take into account. On my personal accounts, I can say I've been punched multiple times, and recently got kicked pretty hard by a mental health patient. And I've never been punched or kicked by somebody who wasn't mentally altered and able to make that cognitive decision to hurt somebody. Verbal abuse, now this is something that is just really common in the healthcare setting. It happens like quite frequently, routinely. Patients just become confused in the ICU a lot, and their first reaction is to become violent and angry, and they just yell at you, and it seems like it's a pretty common thing. Now, thankfully, I don't have a lot of cases where patients are alert and oriented, but when they do, I usually always try and write them up to make sure that management takes a look at the case to understand that verbal abuse in the healthcare setting needs to be addressed. And that, everybody, is what we've got for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun writing this episode. I enjoy making these videos. If you liked my video and you have something to comment, leave something down below. If you disagree with everything that I have to say, that's okay. You can go ahead and disagree with me on my own show. Leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. That's all we've got for this week's episode. Hope you have a nice day.